I discovered the painting in a small antique store on the outskirts of town, hidden behind dusty stacks of moth-eaten tapestries and cracked porcelain figurines. Its canvas sagged in a tarnished gilded frame, the colors muted by layers of grime. Yet there was an unmistakable allure that drew my eyes immediately. It depicted a night sky scattered with pale stars over a darkened landscape. There was nothing outwardly remarkable at first glance. No dramatic shooting stars, no swirling, yet something in the tilt of those stars felt off, like an unsettling geometry that did not belong to any map of heaven I'd ever known. A peculiar hush fell over me, as though every distant galaxy in the painting were whispering to remain silent. The proprietor, a stooped older man with rheumy eyes, approached me without a word. He looked from me to the painting, and I noticed a flicker of apprehension on his face, almost as if he were bracing himself for an unpleasant memory. He mentioned that the painting had been part of an estate sale from a decrepit manor in the northern hills. The owner had insisted it be removed from the premises at all costs. When I asked why, the old man shrugged, avoiding my gaze. He muttered only that it had a certain reputation, but he offered no further explanation. Even so, there was something uncanny about the heavy hush around that canvas. I felt compelled to purchase it, drawn by a fascination I could not articulate. I took the painting home that evening. My little attic apartment, with its slanted ceilings and single window, was cramped with my books and scattered bits of archaeology paraphernalia. By profession, I researched local legends and folk tales, translating dusty texts and trying to piece together old mythologies. It gave me some standing at the small college nearby, but it also made me prone to believing in the improbable. I told myself the image tugged at my scholarly curiosity, and I wanted to keep it as a conversation piece. But late that night I gazed at it under the dim electric lamp, unable to shake a deep, underlying dread. I couldn't quite explain why, yet it felt as though the painted constellations were shifting, imperceptibly, but shifting nonetheless. I pushed the thought away, telling myself it was merely my imagination. After all, old paintings warped over time, the oil settling into cracks, illusions formed by partial light. Exhausted from a long day, I went to bed, half expecting to dream of that star-strewn canvas. But my dreams were empty, filled with a deep blackness that weighed on my subconscious. I awoke well before dawn, pulled from sleep by a sense of being watched. My heart pounded in my chest, so I crept into the living room and turned on a small lamp. At first, the painting looked the same, but upon closer inspection, I noticed that the arrangement of the stars was different. Where there had been a single cluster near the right edge the night before, there now appeared a small, ragged constellation in the center. The moon, which had been a white smear previously, was now absent. My rational mind insisted that this was impossible, an illusion caused by the lighting and my unsettled state. But the more I stared at it, the more certain I became that this was no trick of the eye. The painting was not just changing in the sense of the colors shifting. The heavenly bodies themselves were rearranging. I felt a shiver course through me, blending fascination with primal dread. Desperate for reassurance, I took a photograph of the painting on my phone. I needed evidence, something that would confirm or deny the illusions plaguing me. Then, in the morning, after a few restless hours of sleep, I compared the photograph to the painting. Sure enough, it no longer matched. In the photo, there was the moon and a subtle swirl of stars, but in real life, the painting showcased a different stellar layout altogether. My heart leapt into my throat. Photographs were not subject to illusions in the same way an overtired mind might be. This was tangible proof. The painting had changed. That day, I pored over my collection of old manuscripts and half-forgotten mythological texts, searching for any reference to starry artwork that could shift its aspect. I found scattered mentions of certain cursed objects, a tapestry rumored to move its figures at midnight, an ancient mosaic that supposedly forecast plagues. None, however, described a painting capable of charting the night sky's transformation. As the afternoon sun gave way to evening, I found myself filled with a prickly anticipation. What new arrangement of constellations would appear once darkness fell? When twilight arrived, I observed the painting under a single candle's glow. I felt it more appropriate somehow. Electric light seemed too harsh, as though it might provoke something. The shadows in my small attic flickered restlessly. At first, the painting was quiet, the same arrangement I had seen that morning. Then, around 9 o'clock, the moonless sky depicted on the canvas darkened further. The stars tightened into a cluster of overlapping circles, forming a miniature spiral. It reminded me of a snail shell, or a nebula twisted into a monstrous shape. My chest constricted. The swirl looked hungry, if such a thing were possible in a painted image. My scholarly instincts wrestled with my fear. I decided to label and map the constellations I saw. Grabbing a sketch pad, I began to draw. But the shapes seemed to defy classification, as if they were mimicking patterns of some half-forgotten zodiac. I recognized nothing from Earth's traditional celestial cartography. No Orion, no Ursa Major. Instead, these configurations appeared alien, ancient, and menacing. Their geometry was wrong, angles too sharp or curves too deliberate. By midnight, I'd managed only a scraggly approximation. The process left me feeling cold and unaccountably watched. Despite my dread, I found myself compelled to continue my research the next day. I took another set of photographs. Once more, the painting did not match the images by the time I compared them after lunch. Evidently, it changed, not just at night, but at various strange intervals. I tried to pinpoint the exact hour. Sometimes it flickered at dusk, other times it shifted in the small hours before dawn. The only rule was that the transformation was undeniably linked to the arrival of darkness, or the approach of it. It was as though the painting was alive, breathing some cosmic pulse in time with an unseen celestial clock. During one of these vigil nights, I lit an old oil lamp that I had inherited from my grandfather. The lamp cast a gentle, wavering glow, which made the painting's surface gleam with a sly wetness. I was struck by an irrational fear that the brushstrokes were not pigments at all, but some form of sentient starlight pinned to canvas. My mind spun. I recalled tales of cosmic horrors, ancient gods who walked between the stars, beckoning humans to their doom. Perhaps this painting was a gateway to those nightmares. As I stared, shapes wavered in the paint, forming an array of new constellations, twisting around a gaping darkness near the center. The pattern suggested a funnel, a vortex through which something might emerge. Desperate for clarity, I sought out the old antiques dealer again, but his shop was closed. A handwritten sign on the door, scrawled in frantic black ink, read, "No more. Do not knock." When I peered inside, I glimpsed shapes piled on the floor, racks of dusty antiques toppled over in disarray. A sense of doom crept over me. A fleeting thought. Perhaps the proprietor knew more than he had let on, and the painting's presence in his store had brought him to the brink of sanity. Yet I had no way to confirm. I left, feeling a cold sweat bead on my forehead. Upon returning to my apartment, I found the painting in the center of the room, not on the wall where I'd left it. My first irrational thought was that a burglar had come in and moved it, but there was no sign of forced entry. Frantic, I checked the door and windows. All locked from the inside. I forced myself to approach the painting. It lay face up on the floor, its night sky swirling with roiling black clouds, though hours earlier it had depicted an almost clear sky. Now the stars dotted the edges, forming arcing patterns like serpents coiled around the canvas. In the middle, a blackness so dark that it hurt my eyes. I felt the presence of something older than imagination, gazing back at me through that painted void. I realized my obsession was growing. My fear of sleeping combined with a compulsion to track every metamorphosis as though my life depended on it. I wasn't sure if the painting was controlling me, or if my curiosity was fueling this relentless vigilance. My appetite vanished. I scribbled notes incessantly. Strange words drifted into my mind like whispers in an alien tongue. I would come to, pen in hand, and find cryptic phrases scrawled across the pages. The abyss is open. Stars shall devour. She comes with the black horizon. My dreams, when I allowed myself a brief rest, were haunted by skittering shapes etched against a star-filled sky. Each shape a monstrous constellation that stared with malignant intent. The transformations continued to intensify with each passing night. Sometimes I heard faint scratching noises, as if the painted starlight itself was grating on the canvas. Certain nights, the moon reappeared in the painting, but it looked bent or fractured, shining with an eerie phosphorescence. Other nights, no moon showed at all, only swirling patterns that gave me vertigo if I looked too long. By now I was taking hourly photographs and scrawling timestamps on them. A disjointed narrative emerged, charting the painting's descent from a relatively calm night sky into a kaleidoscope of twisted star patterns. Even the color palette had changed. Where once it had been somber blues and grays, it now writhed with bruised purples, sickly yellows, and streaks of crimson like arterial blood. At last, when my unease became too great, I visited Tobias Gray, a colleague at the local college with expertise in anomalous anthropology and archaeoastronomy. Though reluctant to bring him into such a bizarre matter, I felt I had no choice. I showed him the photographs. At first he laughed, joking that I must be quite a digital manipulator. But when he saw how terrified I was, his expression grew serious. He compared the star patterns to ancient Babylonian and Sumerian constellations. He flipped through references to obscure Celtic star lore. Nothing matched. The best he could do was point out that some shapes loosely resembled mythic creatures. Serpents, multi-headed beasts, eyes floating in the blackness. That evening, he came to my attic to see the painting for himself. The moment he laid eyes on it, he paled. We spent hours combined in uneasy silence, watching. Around midnight, the black center of the canvas pulsed, spreading outward until it almost consumed the entire painting. Tobias murmured something about a cosmic womb, the place from which dark gods might be birthed. As the blackness receded, more twisted stars emerged, forming a circle around a shape that looked horrifyingly like an immense mouth, a ring of pale starlight around a dark aperture. It seemed to grin at us, hungry and expectant. When dawn broke, Tobias staggered from the apartment, vowing never to return. He offered a final piece of advice: burn the painting, destroy it before it consumed me, and possibly something else. But how does one burn a painting that shows you new impossible vistas of cosmic horror every night? How does one destroy that which might be an omen of greater threat? The painting's transformations were building toward something, some alignment. I sensed it in my bones, fighting panic. I delved into the deeper archives left by my grandfather, who had also been a folklorist and collector of strange items. Shoved in a corner of an old trunk, I found a few brittle texts referencing a cursed canvas crafted by a deranged painter centuries ago. The painter had claimed to see the night, a realm where monstrous stars spelled out the doom of civilizations. Those who possessed the painting were driven mad by its nightly metamorphoses, eventually ushering in dreadful manifestations, plagues of shadows, rains of blood, unspeakable shapes appearing in the skies overhead. The painting was rumored to be a harbinger, charting the approach of malevolent constellations that would one day break into our world. Able to realize with growing horror that I might be witnessing the final steps of that prophecy. Each night's shift in the painting was another step in the alignment of these dark bodies. Some ancient cosmic tide was rising, and the painting was its herald. If I destroyed it prematurely, might it unleash something terrible? Or was that precisely what needed to happen to avert a greater disaster? My mind reeled with the implications. In my delirium, I imagined the entire earth swallowed by the yawning blackness in that canvas. By the time the new moon arrived, a date I feared might mark the culmination of this malignant cycle, I was ragged beyond measure, haunted by every creak in the floorboards and every flicker of light. The final nights leading to the new moon were the worst. The painting glowed with malicious intensity, each star shimmering as if it had its own consciousness. I saw shapes scatter across the sky, drawn to the central blackness. Cruel spirals, clusters shaped like barbed talons, arcs that seemed to form monstrous silhouettes. A red star flared in the corner of the painting, flickering in and out of sight. That night, the transformation was slower, almost deliberate, as though it were savoring each moment. The painting began to hum with a low vibration I felt in my chest, even though I could hear no audible noise. I lit every lantern and lamp I had, hoping to keep darkness at bay. To my horror, the painting seemed to absorb the light, its surface growing brighter with an internal luminescence. At last, the final alignment took shape, a ring of swirling stars around that immense, inky void at the center. I felt a pull, as if gravity itself were emanating from the canvas. Wind rattled the window panes, though there was no storm outside. My apartment's shadows gathered, stretching along the floor. I braced myself against my chair, fear coiling in my stomach as the ring of stars on the canvas began to rotate. The blackness within the ring deepened to an unfathomable pitch, a color so absolute that it made the surrounding night sky in the painting seem gray by comparison. In that bottomless void, I glimpsed something shifting, a hint of colossal movement, a shape like a cosmic eye or a mouth, swirling with diseased colors. My breath caught. The painting was no longer merely a painting, it had become a window. I felt a wave of nausea, convinced something was on the other side, straining to crack the membrane between worlds. Time lost its meaning as I stared, transfixed. Images flashed in my mind, storms of stardust bathing entire planets in shadow, incalculable beings drifting through the cosmos, devouring suns. I felt intangible fingers scraping at my psyche. In a haze, I clutched the nearest bottle of lamp oil and poured it over the canvas. Hands trembling, I struck a match. It flared, the flame dancing with unpredictable fervor. With a half-sob, half-scream, I tossed it onto the painting. Oil caught fire with a whoosh. Flames licked greedily at the edges of the canvas, devouring the centuries-old paint and wood. Yet the moment the fire touched the painting, a thunderous sound reverberated through my apartment, shaking books from the shelves. I stumbled backward, shielding my eyes. The flames danced in absurd colors, green, violet, sickly yellow, before everything exploded in a rush of heat. I felt an acrid smell assault my nostrils, and I fell to my knees. In the conflagration, the painting's center writhed like a living thing, refusing to be consumed. I could only watch helplessly, praying the fire would finish its dreadful work. Eventually, the roaring diminished. The painting was reduced to a charred skeleton of blackened wood and scorched canvas. For a moment, I was gripped by an irrational certainty that the black void had escaped. My gaze darted across the room, expecting to see a living darkness slithering along the walls. But no. The calm that settled was near absolute. The only sounds were the gentle crackle of dying embers and my ragged breathing. Wind rattled the window, but no cosmic horror emerged. I dragged myself upright. My limbs shook, my ears still rang, but there was an immense feeling of relief when I realized the painting was utterly destroyed. I busied myself dousing the last remnants of flame. By dawn, only ash remained, the gilded frame twisted into unrecognizable lumps of metal. I gingerly scooped everything into a metal bin, then carried it outside. The morning sunlight felt surreal, as if I had emerged from a tomb. My mind reeled, trying to process what I had witnessed. There was no rational explanation, yet I could not deny the evidence of my own eyes. For weeks, I avoided the night sky, afraid I might spot those malevolent constellations overhead. Sleep came sporadically, haunted by fleeting impressions of swirling darkness and half-seen monstrosities. I tried to convince myself that destroying the accursed painting had severed the connection, yet I sometimes caught glimpses of bizarre star patterns through my attic window, patterns that seemed to vanish the instant I truly focused on them. In moments of weakness, I questioned whether it was my imagination or if I truly saw those flickers of cosmic menace. I have since moved to a different residence, far from my former attic, hoping to lead the entire bizarre night. The antique store is closed for good, its windows shuttered. The old proprietor has vanished, no trace found. My colleague Tobias departed the college abruptly, claiming unspecified personal reasons. The few times I tried to contact him, I received either silence or frantic refusals to speak. Perhaps he is as haunted as I. In quiet moments, I pick up the photographs I took. Frozen snapshots of a painting that no longer exists. They unsettle me deeply. Even on those static images, I sometimes think I see subtle shifts in the arrangement of stars, as though the painting's essence lives on. I try not to dwell on it. I remind myself that I took action, that the gateway was destroyed. Yet the question gnaws at me. Did my final act halt the alignment, or merely herald its arrival? I cannot say for certain. All I know is that on some nights, the wind howls in a strange pitch, and I swear that the darkness between the stars is more profound than ever before, throbbing with a malign intelligence. There are nights when I simply cannot bear to look at the sky, for fear of what I might see staring back. Perhaps the painting truly was a portent. Perhaps the dim shapes in the heavens remain ever watchful, always rearranging, biding their time. If one day those malevolent constellations do appear overhead in our real sky, we may have no recourse. Until then, I live with an uneasy truce, each new night a reminder that the stars, whether on canvas or infinite black, are not always silent, and sometimes they foretell a doom we are powerless to escape.